The road stretches endlessly under my headlights, a pitch-black ribbon cutting through the quiet night. I flick the radio, skipping through static-filled channels, looking for anything to drown out the silence gnawing at me. Just last week, I would have been heading home to my wife's waiting embrace, a life of love and trust that I thought was unbreakable. But now, everything I held dear feels like an illusion, one shattered by a cruel twist I never saw coming. Her name is Amy, my wife of 5 years. We met in college, two starry-eyed kids who thought they could take on the world together. We got married right after graduation, in the midst of a life brimming with dreams and plans. I became a welder, just like my dad, working jobs around the country, earning good money to give Amy the life we'd always dreamed of. For years, I labored on distant job sites, sacrificing time and comfort to put her through law school, thinking I was building our future. But things changed. Lately, she's been distant, her warmth replaced with something colder, a barrier I can't break through. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself she was stressed from her new job at one of the top law firms in town. But no matter how much I wanted to believe things were fine, I couldn't ignore the shifts in her behavior. I'd come home from a long stretch away, only to find her phone glued to her hand or turned face down on the table, her laughter reserved for someone on the other end of the screen. Tonight, the doubts swirling in my mind have brought me to this stretch of deserted road, my heart pounding with a cocktail of rage and heartbreak. Earlier, I saw a text on her phone from someone named Dan, a name that's become as familiar as a thorn in my side. I had enough. I needed answers. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a tracking app on her phone. The moment I saw her car's location on my screen, a bar across town, I knew I had to confront her. With a steadying breath, I turned into the parking lot, a dive bar glowing dimly under neon signs, a place I'd never imagined her stepping foot in. And there, at the edge of the lot, I see her car, the one I'd bought with the savings I scrimped and saved. She's here, all right, and judging by the late hour, she's not here for a quick drink with friends. I pull my truck into a space far enough to avoid notice, cutting the engine to sit in the silence, watching. The minutes tick by slowly, each one a weight on my chest, filling my mind with images I don't want to imagine. Just as I'm about to get out, the door swings open, and I see her stepping out with a man by her side. Dan. He's got that confident swagger, a man who doesn't worry about the destruction he leaves in his wake. They walk together, close, laughing as if they haven't a care in the world. I grit my teeth, feeling the bile rise in my throat. My world, my marriage, my faith in the woman I've loved and sacrificed for, ripped apart by a smirk and a stolen moment. But I'm not going to confront her. Not yet. I have a better plan. I sit there, fists clenched on the steering wheel, eyes locked on them. She laughs, her hand grazing his arm like she used to with me, a playful touch that once told me I was her world. They share that intimacy as if it's the most natural thing, and for the first time, I feel like a ghost haunting my own life. They climb into his car, and I watch as he pulls out of the lot with her in the passenger seat, leaning back with a relaxed smile. There's no guilt, no hesitation. My jaw clenches, every muscle in my body tensing with anger. But even in my rage, a part of me knows charging in there and confronting her would only end in more heartache. This needs to be calculated, controlled. I follow at a distance, keeping my headlights dimmed as they wind through the city streets, heading toward a part of town we rarely visited together. I wonder if she has any idea I'm here, shadowing her secret life, or if she's so wrapped up in her world that I've become an afterthought. My mind races with questions I don't want to answer. How long has this been going on? Is it just him, or are there others? Every detail feels like a punch to the gut, making it harder to stay calm. But I force myself to breathe slowly, keep my mind sharp, and watch. If she thinks she can turn my life upside down without facing the consequences, she's in for a surprise. They pull up to an upscale apartment complex, a place that seems far removed from the dive bars and clubs she's been frequenting. It's clear that he's got money, the kind of wealth I used to think we were building together. My heart twists in a painful knot, the realization settling in. She wasn't looking for just a fling. She wanted a life that I couldn't give her, a world where appearances and luxuries meant more than loyalty and love. I park at a nearby coffee shop, watching them disappear into the building. I could go after them now, but I resist the urge. Instead, I pull out my phone, opening the tracking app one installed, watching her location settle inside that building. A plan starts forming in my mind, something to reclaim my control over this situation. She might think she's gotten away with her betrayal, but I intend to turn her deception against her in a way she'd never expect. I sit there, thinking through every detail, every step I'd need to take to get my justice. No confrontation, no begging her for answers that would only tear me apart. No, if she wants a life without me, then I'll give it to her. But not before she understands just what she's losing. Turning the key in the ignition, I pull out of the lot, heading back to the house I once thought of as our sanctuary. Tonight, I start building my strategy, a way to make sure she regrets ever choosing to betray the life we built. Tomorrow, things will begin to change. I won't be the victim of her lies any longer. #### Part 3. The drive home is a blur of headlights and endless roads, but by the time I reach the house, my plan has begun to crystallize. The familiar surroundings feel foreign. The bed that once brought me comfort now a reminder of betrayal. Sleep is impossible, my mind racing through memories and possibilities, every detail of the past 5 years tinged with doubt. I thought I knew her, but clearly, I was blind. By dawn, I've made my decision. I'll let her keep digging her own grave, watching her, calculating my moves, until the time is right. She doesn't know it, but she's playing by my rules now. The next few days pass in a tense silence between us. She goes about her usual routine, oblivious to the storm brewing. The tracker reveals her predictable schedule: work, girls' nights, the occasional late meeting. My patience wears thin with each notification, but I hold back, biding my time. A confrontation now would be a relief, but I want her to feel the weight of her choices, to watch everything she's taken for granted slip through her fingers. Then, one evening, I find my opening. Amy comes home late from another girls' night, stumbling through the door with that careless smile she used to give me. She barely acknowledges my presence, heading straight for the shower, her phone carelessly left on the kitchen counter. My heart pounds, the opportunity too good to ignore. Without a second thought, I unlock her phone, fingers shaking as I open her messages. The first name I see is Dan. Every text exchange feels like a slap in the face, a sickening confirmation of what I feared. Sweet nothings, inside jokes, plans for weekends that I thought she was spending with her friends. She even sends him photos, little glimpses of a side of her I haven't seen in months. My grip tightens on the phone, anger swirling with the sickening realization of how far this has gone. But then, an idea forms, one that brings a strange, cold satisfaction. I take screenshots of their conversations, storing them somewhere safe. If she wants a life with this man, then she'll get it. But on my terms. She's going to lose everything, just as easily as she gave it all away. I replace the phone on the counter, moving to the living room as if nothing happened. By the time she comes out of the shower, I'm casually flipping through the channels, pretending not to notice her sheepish glance in my direction. I wait for her to say something, but she simply mumbles a quick, "good night," and disappears into the bedroom. The night passes slowly, each hour stretching into eternity, but I hold on to my anger, letting it fuel my resolve. She thinks she's won, that her secret is safe, but she's going to realize soon enough that she misjudged me. The next morning, I start putting my plan into motion. I make a few calls, beginning with a lawyer. I want to make sure everything's in order before I pull the rug out from under her. She might have taken my love for granted, but she won't find me so easy to manipulate when it comes to the law. The lawyer's office is sleek, professional. Everything I need to make sure this process is handled with precision. I've spent years working with my hands, sweating through hours of grueling labor to build a life for Amy and me, but this is different. Here, every word matters. Every clause could make or break the future I'm building for myself, separate from her. I sit across from Mr. Gray, a man in his 50s with a sharp gaze and a reputation for his ruthless efficiency in divorce cases. As I lay out my story, he listens without judgment, taking notes and asking the occasional question. When I mention the texts and the tracker, he leans forward, nodding in approval. You've handled this well so far, he says, his tone measured. The screenshots will be invaluable evidence, especially if she tries to contest anything in court. Are you prepared for how ugly this could get? The question catches me off guard, but I don't flinch. Whatever it takes. I want to do this the right way. No scene, no confrontation. I just want her to feel the impact when she realizes it's all over. He nods, understanding my resolve. We'll start by securing your assets. I can help you transfer anything important into a separate account, just to protect yourself while we go through the process. And you mentioned she's been using the joint account for these excursions? The thought stings, but I nod, feeling the anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. She's been using our money, my hard-earned money, to pay for everything. Dinners, hotel rooms, even little gifts for him. She thought I wouldn't notice. Mr. Gray's mouth tightens, a hint of satisfaction in his gaze. Good. This will play in your favor, especially if we show a pattern of deceit. Let's document everything. You're not only protecting yourself, but ensuring she faces consequences. Leaving the office, I feel a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time in weeks, I feel like I'm in control, no longer a pawn in her game. If Amy wants to betray the life we built, she's going to pay for it, and not just financially. Over the next few days, I go about my life with a subtle, newfound calm. I continue my job as if nothing's changed, keeping our conversations polite and distant. Amy seems unaware, living in blissful ignorance, still sneaking around with Dan, her deception no longer hidden from me. The thrill she must feel, sneaking around, lying so easily. It sickens me, but I keep my cool, letting her think she's gotten away with it. One night, I take it a step further. Amy is out again, this time working late. As she told me with a casual shrug, I use the evening to begin dismantling parts of her digital life, carefully and quietly. I log into our joint email account, scanning through her recent messages, her shared documents. There's a hint of satisfaction as I delete certain files, remove her access to certain accounts, little by little erasing her reach over our shared world. It's petty, maybe, but it's a small taste of what she's done to me. Then, I dig deeper. One of her emails to Dan catches my eye. They've planned a weekend getaway to a conference in the next town over, complete with reservations under a fake name. I smirk, realizing she's been brazen enough to use our joint account for it. It's perfect, another piece of evidence for my case, one that I'll soon use to close this chapter for good. But I'm not stopping there. I have one more move up my sleeve, something that will make her feel the sting of betrayal as sharply as I did. It's almost poetic, and I can already imagine the look on her face when she realizes what I've done. The weekend arrives, and I watch Amy pack her bag with casual ease, humming softly as she folds her clothes. Her carefree demeanor only fuels my resolve. She's completely unaware of the storm gathering behind her, believing she's set to indulge in yet another stolen weekend with Dan. Little does she know, I've ensured this trip will be her last. She turns to me, her tone as smooth as ever. I've got a work conference out of town. I'll be back Sunday night. You'll be okay, right? I bite back a sarcastic reply, forcing a polite nod. Of course, no problem at all. Just be safe. She flashes a quick, somewhat forced smile, oblivious to my inner fury. I will. See you Sunday then. She leans in, pressing a quick peck on my cheek, a hollow gesture that used to mean so much more. As she heads out the door, I wait until her car disappears down the street before putting my plan into motion. First, I make a call to the hotel where she's staying. I use the name she booked under and confirm her reservation details, feigning a last-minute change. With a bit of smooth talking, I arrange for the hotel to place an additional welcome note and a few special requests for her stay. It's a simple touch, but one that's going to add to her shock when she realizes I know everything. Next, I secure her access to our joint accounts, locking her out and transferring most of the funds to a separate account I've set up. I leave a modest amount behind, just enough to prevent any suspicion before she tries to make a large transaction. The satisfaction I feel as I take back control over what's rightfully mine is almost intoxicating. I've spent too long feeling helpless, but now, the tables are turning. With my preparations in place, I settle back to wait. I've left a subtle breadcrumb trail for her to discover upon her return, a small taste of the chaos she's been bringing into my life. But I won't be here to see her reaction. By the time she returns, I'll be gone, and she'll be left to pick up the pieces of the life she destroyed. The weekend drags on, each hour a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. But by Sunday evening, everything's ready. I pack my essentials, loading up my truck with the few things I actually care about. The house feels strangely empty without her presence, but it's a welcome relief, a breath of fresh air after weeks of choking on betrayal. Just before midnight, I leave a note on the kitchen counter, brief but pointed. I know everything. Enjoy your life with Dan. I don't need to write anything more. The message is clear, and the silence of the empty house will speak louder than any words I could ever say. I take one last look around the place we called home, the place where we built so many memories. There's a pang of regret, a flicker of sorrow for the life I thought we had. But I push it aside. She made her choice, and now it's time for me to make mine. With a deep breath, I step outside, closing the door on my old life. The cold night air hits me as I slide into the driver's seat, starting the engine and feeling a strange mixture of freedom and finality. As I pull away, the road stretches before me, open and endless, a promise of a new beginning. As I drive into the night, I feel the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. The past few weeks have felt like a slow-motion nightmare, but now, with each mile that passes, I'm reclaiming my life. No more lies, no more games. I'm finally free. My phone buzzes around dawn, jolting me back to the present. It's Amy, her number flashing on the screen. I can almost picture her face, probably still groggy from her conference, wondering why she can't access the joint account. I let it ring, savoring the satisfaction of leaving her in the dark. She calls again, then again, but each time, I ignore it, my resolve hardening. Eventually, she stops calling, and I can only imagine the confusion brewing in her mind. She's likely scrambling to figure out what's going on, to find a way to reach me, maybe even contacting our friends to see if they know anything. But I know Amy well enough to understand that she'll only confront me once she's exhausted all other options. Her pride won't let her ask for help until she's desperate. By mid-morning, I've arrived at a small town a few hours from home. I find a quiet cafe, order a strong coffee, and settle into a corner booth, flipping through my phone. Sure enough, there are a dozen missed calls from her and a string of texts, each one more frantic than the last. Amy asterisk, hey, I think there's a problem with the bank. Can you check it out? Amy asterisk, seriously, can you call me back? I can't access our account. Amy asterisk, where are you? Are you okay? Then, finally, the text I was waiting for. Amy asterisk, what's going on? Did you do something with the money? We need to talk. I smirk, imagining her frustration as she realizes I've taken control. She's going to spiral when she sees the note I left behind. But for now, I keep my phone off and focus on the fresh start ahead of me. After spending most of the day in town, I get back on the road, heading toward a rental cabin I'd reserved under a different name. It's small, remote, just the way I need it to be while I figure out my next steps. As I settle in, I think about what's left behind. My career, my friends, the future I'd once mapped out with Amy. But none of it matters now. I'm free to rebuild, piece by piece, on my own terms. That night, as I sit by the fire, I finally turn my phone back on, curious to see if there's any new message from her. Sure enough, there's one last text, her desperation almost palpable. Amy asterisk, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but we need to talk. Please, just come home. The word home stings, but it's a hollow plea now. She destroyed that idea long before I walked out. For the first time in weeks, I feel a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that I'm doing the right thing. Amy will have to face her choices alone, just as I did. As the fire crackles and the night settles around me, I lean back, letting the warmth and silence soothe the raw edges of my heart. Tomorrow, I'll start planning my next move, a life I can be proud of, free from lies and betrayal. The next morning, I wake up with a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in months, my mind feels clear, unburdened by doubts or suspicions. After a quick breakfast, I decide to take a drive into town to explore, maybe find a job to keep myself busy while I plan my long-term goals. The town is small, with a handful of shops, a grocery store, and a few restaurants. As I walk down the main street, I notice a hardware store with a "Help Wanted" sign in the window. I step inside, greeted by the familiar smell of sawdust and metal. It reminds me of the weekends I spent as a kid in my dad's workshop, learning the basics of welding and woodworking. The store manager, a middle-aged guy named Tom, is friendly, and after a quick chat, he offers me a job on the spot. It's nothing glamorous, just part-time work stocking shelves and helping customers, but it's exactly the kind of distraction I need. Tom doesn't ask too many questions, just welcomes me with a firm handshake and a smile. I spend the rest of the day getting settled into the rhythm of the shop. The work is physical, hands-on, and it feels good to lose myself in something productive. For a few hours, I can almost forget the turmoil of the past few weeks, focusing solely on the weight of the tools in my hands, the simplicity of the tasks before me. But by the time I leave, the reality of my situation starts creeping back. I check my phone, finding another slew of missed calls and messages from Amy. Part of me wants to read them, to know just how far she's spiraling, but I resist. I know it would only reopen wounds that are still fresh, remind me of the betrayal that drove me to this place. Instead, I switch my phone to silent, stuffing it deep into my pocket as I make my way back to the cabin. I'm exhausted by the time I arrive, but it's a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from a hard day's work. I cook a simple dinner, the quiet solitude of the cabin a balm to my frayed nerves. For once, I feel like I'm in control of my own life, moving forward on my own terms. That night, as I lie in bed, I allow myself to think about the future. There's a freedom in it, a sense of endless possibility that I haven't felt in years. I don't know exactly what lies ahead, but I know one thing for sure. I'll never let myself fall into the same trap again. In the darkness, I make a silent vow to myself. I'll rebuild, stronger and wiser. A man who values his own worth, who won't be deceived by the empty promises of a false love. And as for Amy, well, she'll have to live with the choices she made, with the empty life she's carved out of her own betrayal. Just as I'm drifting off to sleep, my phone buzzes once more. Against my better judgment, I glance at the screen, catching a glimpse of a new message from Amy. Amy asterisk, if you think you're hurting me, you're wrong. I don't need you. The words sting, but I ignore them, tossing the phone aside. She might think she's won, but in the end, she's the one left with nothing. Days turn into weeks, and I settle into a steady rhythm, working at the hardware store by day and retreating to the quiet solace of my cabin each night. The longer I stay here, the more I feel like I'm shedding layers of a life I no longer recognize, leaving behind the man who once trusted blindly, the man who was willing to sacrifice everything for a love that never existed. Tom, the store manager, doesn't pry, though I catch his curious glances every now and then. He knows there's more to my story than I'm letting on, but he respects my silence. In a small town, it's rare to see a stranger show up unannounced, let alone someone willing to work a low-paying job without much explanation. Still, he treats me with respect, letting me find my own way without judgment. One afternoon, while restocking a shelf, I hear the faint chime of the store's bell. I glance over to see a woman I've noticed a few times before, browsing the aisles with an easy grace. Her name is Maggie. She works at the local diner and occasionally stops by for supplies. We've exchanged nods, maybe a few polite words, but today, something's different. She pauses by the shelf I'm organizing, her curious gaze settling on me. "New in town?" she asks, a friendly smile softening her features. I nod, returning her smile. "Yeah, just passing through for a while. Needed a change of scenery." I can relate," she says with a knowing look. Sometimes, a fresh start is exactly what we need. There's a sincerity in her voice that catches me off guard, a quiet understanding that makes me feel unexpectedly seen. We chat for a few minutes about small things, the town, the best spots to grab a coffee, the upcoming local fair. It's nothing deep, but for the first time since I left, I feel a flicker of normalcy, a hint of a connection that doesn't carry the weight of betrayal. As she heads toward the register, she pauses, turning back to me. If you ever need someone to show you around, let me know. Small towns can be hard to navigate on your own. I nod, thanking her, though I can't imagine diving into anything new right now. The thought of letting someone else into my life is both tempting and terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I'm ready to take the leap. After she leaves, I can't shake the strange sense of calm that our brief interaction brought. It's as if her kindness, her quiet presence, is a reminder that there's more to life beyond the pain Amy left behind. Maybe, just maybe, there's a version of my life that isn't defined by betrayal, a future that holds something softer, something real. Later that night, back at the cabin, I find myself thinking about Maggie's words. A fresh start. It sounds simple, but it's a challenge I'm only just beginning to face. I've spent so long caught up in Amy's web of lies that I've forgotten what it means to live for myself, to make choices that aren't colored by someone else's betrayal. For the first time since I left, I feel a small flicker of hope, a glimpse of something beyond the walls I've built around my heart. And while I'm not ready to let anyone in just yet, the thought that I could someday, it feels like a lifeline, a chance to rebuild not just my life, but myself. Tomorrow, I'll wake up, go to work, and keep moving forward, one day at a time. And maybe, if I'm lucky, the scars Amy left behind will start to fade, replaced by something stronger, something that belongs to me alone. The next morning, I find myself looking forward to work in a way I haven't in years. There's a sense of purpose now, something more than just a means of escape. As I walk into the store, Tom greets me with a nod, his usual cheerful demeanor somehow more noticeable today. I'm not sure if it's the fresh mountain air or Maggie's words lingering in my mind, but I feel lighter. The day moves quickly, customers coming in and out, sharing bits of their lives as they shop. In this small town, everyone seems to know each other, and even though I'm a stranger, they greet me with warmth. It's a stark contrast to the cold indifference that had settled into my life with Amy over the past year. I realized that while I may have been committed, I was alone long before she betrayed me. Around lunchtime, Maggie walks in again, and I catch her eye. She smiles, and there's a friendliness in her gaze that feels comforting, familiar. She's holding a list, scanning the shelves as she approaches. "Busy day?" she asks, tossing a quick glance over her shoulder at the bustling shop. "Seems like it," I reply, nodding toward the steady stream of customers. "Guess folks are getting ready for the weekend." We chat briefly as I help her find the items on her list. She thanks me with a warm smile, and before she leaves, she pauses, her expression turning thoughtful. "I was serious about showing you around, you know? It doesn't have to be today, but whenever you're up for it." She hesitates, as if unsure whether to say more, then shrugs lightly. "Just think about it." I nod, watching her walk out, feeling a strange pull to follow. But I hold myself back, unsure if I'm ready for anything beyond my own healing journey. I'm still reeling from Amy's betrayal, and even the idea of opening up to someone new feels like stepping into unknown territory. But Maggie's offer lingers in my mind long after she leaves, a soft reminder that not everyone carries hidden knives behind friendly smiles. That evening, as I drive back to the cabin, I find myself turning over memories of the life I left behind. The house, the dreams, the future I once shared with Amy. They all feel like relics of someone else's life, fragments of a story that ended long ago. It's hard to let go of that vision, to accept that the woman I once loved turned out to be a stranger, but it's a truth I can't deny. I park the truck and step out into the cool evening air, my thoughts a quiet swirl of Maggie's kindness and Amy's betrayal. As I unlock the cabin door, my phone buzzes in my pocket. I hesitate, half expecting another barrage of messages from Amy, but it's only a notification, a news alert from the town I left. Curious, I open it, and my heart skips as I read the headline. "Local woman files for divorce, alleging financial mismanagement by husband." The name in the article catches my eye. It's Amy's maiden name. I let out a bitter laugh, the irony almost laughable. She's filing for divorce, blaming me for financial issues when she's the one who tore our life apart. But instead of anger, I feel a strange calm, a sense of closure. I no longer need to wonder if she regrets her choices or if she's capable of acknowledging the pain she's caused. This is who she is, someone who will rewrite history to protect her image, who will never admit to her own mistakes. That night, I sit by the fire, watching the flames flicker, their warmth chasing away the last remnants of bitterness. I know now that I'm done with that chapter of my life, that whatever comes next will be mine alone, free from the shadows of deceit. And maybe, just maybe, there's room in my life for new connections, untainted by the lies of the past. The next few days pass quietly, and I let myself sink into the simple rhythm of work and solitude, healing in the quiet, steady pace of life. Tom and I have settled into an easy camaraderie, and I can sense that he respects my space, giving me time to find my footing. I catch a glimpse of Maggie every now and then, but I keep my distance, unsure if I'm ready to open that door just yet. One evening, as I sit by the cabin's fireplace, my phone buzzes unexpectedly. It's an email notification from an account I haven't checked in ages, our old joint account, the one Amy couldn't access anymore. I'm half tempted to ignore it, but something makes me open the message. It's from a financial service alerting me to a large withdrawal request that has just been declined. Amy's attempt to pull out funds triggers a wave of emotions, but none of the rage or resentment I once felt. Instead, I feel a calm satisfaction, knowing that her reach ends here, that her attempts to regain control over something I've taken back won't succeed. Her desperation feels distant, like a distant echo of a life I barely remember. And with each passing day, I realize I'm one step closer to moving beyond the pain she caused, towards something that feels grounded, real. I delete the notification, closing the email account for good. Whatever battles she's fighting, they no longer concern me. The next morning, I decide to take Maggie up on her offer. After work, I swing by the diner where she works and find her just finishing up her shift. She's surprised to see me but hides it with a smile, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she comes over. "Still up for that tour?" I ask, hoping I don't sound as nervous as I feel. "Absolutely," she says, her eyes brightening. "Let me grab my things." We spend the next few hours wandering around town. Maggie introduces me to local spots, sharing little pieces of her life as we walk. I learn she's lived here all her life, knows every street, every story. She tells me about her family, the diner's regulars, and even shares a few amusing stories about Tom, who apparently was quite the local troublemaker in his younger years. It feels good to talk to someone who isn't tangled up in lies or hidden agendas, someone whose words don't sting with betrayal. Maggie's laughter is genuine, her kindness effortless, and I feel my walls slowly start to lower as we share stories under the fading light of the evening. As we walk by the edge of a small lake just outside town, she pauses, looking out at the water. "I don't know what brought you here," she says softly, her gaze thoughtful, "but I think sometimes life has a way of pushing us where we need to be." Her words resonate, and I realize she's right. I came here out of desperation, running from the pain and betrayal of my old life. But now, it feels like I'm finding something I never expected, a sense of peace, of possibility. We stand there in comfortable silence for a while, the quiet enveloping us like a blanket. For the first time, I feel a genuine connection, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I can build a future here. A future that belongs to me, free from the shadows of a life I left behind. As we walk back to town, she turns to me with a warm smile. "Thanks for coming out tonight. It's nice to see you finding your way here." I nod, grateful for her presence, her gentle understanding. "Thank you, Maggie, for everything." She laughs lightly, waving it off. "It's what friends are for." And as I watch her walk away, I feel a flicker of hope, a glimmer of something that feels like home. The weeks pass in a steady rhythm, my life settling into a pace I never thought I'd enjoy. My days at the hardware store have become familiar, even comforting, with Tom's friendly banter and the steady stream of townspeople who stop by. I see Maggie from time to time, usually at the diner or when she swings by the store, and our friendship deepens with each encounter. One afternoon, Tom pulls me aside as I'm helping a customer load supplies into his truck. There's a curious glint in his eye as he folds his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Got a minute to chat?" he asks, his tone unusually serious. I nod, feeling a twinge of unease as he gestures for me to follow him into the back office. Once inside, He shuts the door and turns to me, his expression thoughtful. Listen, I don't mean to pry, he begins, scratching the back of his head. But Maggie's mentioned that you're, well, new to town, trying to find your footing. I nod cautiously, not quite sure where this is going. I figured as much, he says, chuckling. It's none of my business, but I've seen folks come through here with all kinds of stories, some running from something, others just needing a change. He pauses, looking me square in the eye. But whatever it is, I just want you to know that you're welcome here. We all carry our own weight, you know? There's a warmth in his words, a kindness I didn't expect. It's rare to find people who accept you without needing the full story, who respect that some things are better left unsaid. Thanks, Tom, I say, feeling the sincerity of his offer. I really appreciate that. He nods, clapping me on the shoulder with a grin. Good. And if you ever need more hours, just let me know. Could always use an extra hand around here. The moment brings a sense of comfort, like I've finally found a place where I don't have to explain myself. I'm just me. Later that evening, I drive out to the lake where Maggie and I walked the other night. The sky is painted with the soft hues of twilight, the water reflecting the fading light. I take a seat by the shore, breathing in the quiet solitude, letting the peace of this place settle into my bones. As I sit there, memories of Amy drift through my mind, faint echoes of the life I left behind. It's strange how time has softened the edges of that pain, how the anger has ebbed, leaving only a sense of resolve. I don't hate her anymore, not in the way I did at first. Instead, I feel a quiet acceptance, a realization that her choices don't define me. I am more than the betrayal, more than the man she took for granted. The silence is interrupted by the sound of footsteps, and I look up to see Maggie walking toward me. She smiles, a soft, familiar expression, and takes a seat beside me. Thought I might find you here, she says, glancing out over the lake. This spot has a way of drawing people in. I nod, grateful for her presence. It's peaceful, makes you feel like everything will be all right. We sit together in silence, watching as the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon. There's something comforting in her presence, a quiet strength that anchors me to this new life. After a while, she turns to me, her gaze thoughtful. You're healing, you know, she says softly. I can see it. Whatever brought you here, it's losing its hold on you. I look at her, realizing just how right she is. I am healing in ways I never expected. And maybe, just maybe, there's room for something new, something untainted by the shadows of my past. As we sit by the water, the stars beginning to dot the sky, I feel a sense of hope blooming within me. A hope that feels real, solid, and entirely mine. The days that follow are marked by a quiet contentment I never thought I'd feel again. I'm finally free from the bitterness that once held me captive, and each day brings a sense of calm, a stability I'd long forgotten. Maggie and I fall into a natural friendship, our connection deepening with each passing conversation. She has a way of making me feel grounded, her laughter and warmth a balm to the wounds I'm still healing from. One evening, Maggie invites me to a local gathering, a town bonfire held on the weekends at the edge of the lake. It's a tradition here, a way for everyone to unwind, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. I hesitate at first, but she insists, her smile infectious. When we arrive, the fire crackles in the center of a small clearing, casting a warm glow over the faces gathered around. People greet me with nods and friendly smiles, some even calling me by name. It's a strange feeling, being part of a community again, feeling accepted without question. For the first time, I don't feel like the outsider running from a broken past. I feel like one of them. Maggie introduces me to her friends, and we settle onto a log near the fire, joining the laughter and easy conversation. As the night wears on, someone brings out a guitar, and a soft melody fills the air. I lean back, watching the firelight dance across Maggie's face as she listens to the music, her eyes bright with contentment. She catches me looking and smiles, nudging me playfully. You look happy, she says, her voice barely audible over the music. I think I am, I reply, surprised by the honesty of my words. I am happy, in a way I haven't been in years. This life, this simple peace, It's exactly what I needed. We sit in companionable silence, the warmth of the fire and the laughter of the people around us a comforting backdrop. For the first time in a long time, I feel truly present, no longer haunted by the past or worried about the future. Here, with Maggie by my side, I feel whole. As the night drifts toward dawn, people start to head home, leaving only a handful of us by the fire. Maggie and I linger, reluctant to let the night end. The stars stretch across the sky, and the lake lies calm and still, reflecting the moonlight like a mirror. She turns to me, her gaze soft. "You know, you're stronger than you think," she says, her tone gentle yet firm. "Most people would be bitter after what you've been through, but you've chosen something better. You chose to heal." Her words hit me deeply, resonating with a truth I hadn't fully acknowledged. I have chosen to heal, to let go of the pain that once defined me. I reach out, taking her hand, grateful for her kindness, for the way she's helped me find my way back to myself. "Thank you," I say, my voice thick with emotion. "For everything." She squeezes my hand, her smile warm. "Anytime." We sit by the fire until the last embers die out, the dawn creeping over the horizon. And as the light of a new day breaks, I feel a quiet certainty settle within me. I am ready for whatever comes next. The days after the bonfire feel different, a calm warmth settling over my life, like I've turned a corner. Maggie and I continue to spend time together, falling into a routine that feels both familiar and new. We meet for coffee, take walks by the lake, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence, sharing the kind of peace that doesn't need words. But one evening, while I'm at the cabin organizing some old belongings, my phone buzzes. I glance at the screen, surprised to see an email from Amy. My instinct is to ignore it. She's part of a life I'm actively leaving behind. But curiosity, or maybe some lingering need for closure, pushes me to open it. The message is brief, a strange mix of apology and accusation. "Amy asterisk, I know things ended badly, and I admit I made mistakes, but you were too distant. You were always working, always away. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. But what else was I supposed to do? I'm sorry, but I don't regret moving on." Her words are sharp, laced with a bitterness that tries to blame me for her choices. I feel a twinge of old anger but realize it's fleeting, weak against the strength I've built since I left. Her attempt to pin the blame on me no longer stings the way it once would have. In fact, I almost feel a sense of pity. She's still trapped in the past, justifying her actions, while I'm here, building something genuine and new. I close the email, deciding not to reply. There's no point in rehashing a story that's already over. I've moved on, and whatever guilt or anger she feels isn't mine to bear. For the first time, I truly feel free of her, as if a final cord has been cut. Later that evening, I meet Maggie at the diner. She's there with a few friends, laughing and sharing stories. When she sees me walk in, she waves me over, her smile lighting up the room. I sit beside her, feeling a rush of warmth, a sense of belonging that fills the empty spaces Amy left behind. As the night goes on, I realize that I've found something far more valuable than revenge or closure. I've found myself. I've built a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's lies or betrayals, a life that's whole on its own. And Maggie, with her gentle strength and easy laughter, is part of that new chapter, someone who's helped me remember what it feels like to trust again. When we step outside at the end of the night, the cool air filled with the quiet hum of the town settling down, I take her hand, pulling her close. "Maggie," I begin, my voice steady but soft. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you to be part of it." She looks up at me, her eyes bright with an unspoken promise. "I'm not going anywhere," she says, her voice a whisper in the night. As we stand there, wrapped in each other's warmth, I realize I'm no longer running from my past. I'm moving forward toward a life filled with hope, honesty, and the kind of love that's built on trust. The following days feel like the beginning of a new life, one built on genuine connections and quiet happiness. I settle into the routines of the town, the small yet fulfilling rhythm that defines this place. Maggie and I grow closer, our friendship evolving into something deeper. a bond forged not by the intensity of rushed romance, but by shared moments and mutual understanding. One evening, we decide to take a drive to a scenic lookout a few miles outside town. The air is crisp as autumn begins to set in, and the landscape is painted in hues of red, orange, and gold. Maggie sits beside me in the truck, her hand resting on mine as we drive through winding roads, the silence between us comfortable and companionable. When we reach the lookout, we step out into the chilly air, taking in the sweeping view of the valley below. The sun is setting, casting a warm glow over the hills, and there's a quiet beauty to the scene that feels almost surreal. Maggie leans against the railing, her face illuminated by the fading light, and I find myself captivated by the peacefulness she brings into my life. As we stand there, she turns to me, her gaze thoughtful. "You know, I never imagined you'd come into my life the way you did. Sometimes I wonder if all the broken pieces had to fall just right for us to find each other." Her words resonate deeply, and I realize that I feel the same way. If I hadn't gone through the pain, the betrayal, and the struggle to rebuild, I might never have found my way to this moment, to this person who has shown me that love doesn't have to come with conditions or lies. "I think you're right," I say, my voice steady. "I've spent so long looking back, wondering what went wrong, but now, I just feel grateful. Grateful that I get to start over, that I get to share this with you." Maggie smiles, her hand slipping into mine as we stand together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky fades into a deep shade of purple, stars beginning to dot the twilight, and for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of true peace. Whatever the future holds, I know I'll face it with a heart that's healed, a heart that's open to whatever life brings. As we drive back, we don't talk much, but the silence is filled with unspoken promises, a quiet understanding that we're both here, committed to building something real. I glance over at her, and she smiles, her hand squeezing mine gently. It's a small gesture, but it speaks volumes, a silent reminder that I'm no longer alone in this journey. By the time I drop her off at her place, I feel a sense of contentment that I once thought impossible. She leans over, giving me a soft kiss on the cheek before stepping out of the truck, her smile lingering in the air long after she's gone inside. As I drive back to my cabin, I realize that I've found something priceless, a life built on trust, surrounded by people who value honesty and kindness. And with Maggie by my side, I feel a quiet confidence, a strength that no betrayal could ever shatter. The days blur into a contented rhythm, and I start to feel something I thought I'd lost forever: hope. My life has become a blend of simplicity and joy, made up of small moments, Tom's laughter at the shop, the friendly waves from townsfolk, and the quiet warmth of Maggie's companionship. It's a life unmarked by deceit, a life rooted in genuine connections. One evening, after a long day at work, I get a call from my sister. She's heard about the divorce and wants to check in, to see how I'm doing. We talk for hours, catching up on family news and sharing memories from when we were kids. There's a warmth in her voice that reminds me of the home I left behind, but for the first time, I don't feel the urge to go back. I realize that this town, these people, and this life are my home now. As I hang up the phone, there's a knock on the door. I open it to find Maggie standing there, bundled up in a coat, her cheeks pink from the cold. She holds up a thermos, grinning. "Hot chocolate. Thought you could use some company." I let her in, smiling as we settle on the couch. She pours us each a cup, and we sit in comfortable silence, savoring the warmth of the drink and the quiet of the evening. After a while, she looks at me, her gaze soft but serious. "I know you're healing," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I know it takes time, but I want you to know that I'm here, for however long it takes. No rush, no pressure. Just here." Her words fill the room, anchoring me in a way that nothing else has. I feel an overwhelming gratitude for her patience, her kindness, and her unwavering presence. She's given me something I thought I'd never find again: trust. I take her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. "Thank you, Maggie, for everything. I don't know where I'd be without you." She smiles, leaning her head against my shoulder, and we sit there, watching the fire crackle, wrapped in the kind of peace that only comes when you know you're exactly where you're meant to be. That night, as she leaves, I feel a sense of completeness, a quiet joy that fills every corner of my heart. This journey, filled with heartbreak and struggle, has led me to something I never expected, to someone who values me for who I am, who sees the best in me even on the darkest days. And as I close the door, I realize that my story isn't one of loss, it's one of renewal. I've built a life free from betrayal, grounded in trust and love, and surrounded by people who make me better every day. It's a life I can be proud of, a life worth sharing. Looking out into the night, I smile, ready for whatever comes next. This time, I'm not looking back. If you've ever been through something similar or felt the pain of betrayal, let me know your story below. Sometimes, sharing is the first step to healing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it resonated with you. And remember, moving forward can lead to something better than you ever imagined. Thanks for joining me on this journey.